monsoon has begun. Thanks, Emil. I have another out-of-town message. I appeared on Inside Track a number of times over the past years. Mr. Franzi was always very generous with his time on the show and supported both of my campaigns, as well as other issues for the state of Arizona. Emil certainly did a significant thing. He had a great political impact that has been left by the indelible mark he's made on our state. Governor Doug Ducey. When Franzi went into the hospital, he gave Ed Wilkinson and myself a number of people to call. He looked at both of us after sharing the list and said, you know, it's not so important merely to have the phone number to call a bunch of people. It's more important to see who will actually call you back. Obviously, a lot of people are here tonight for that same reason. We both made dozens of phone calls, and almost everybody who could call or come by did. Franzi had so many callers and visits, he finally had to say, enough. One of the nicest calls came from a political colleague and one of the smartest operatives he knew, David Steele. David, please come forward and share some of your thoughts.
First, I want to thank Bruce for all that he's done to support the Franzi family in putting this together. It's a remarkable act of generosity. As somebody who loved Emil, who was mentioned before, I truly appreciate it. Thank you. And he loved you. God, every conversation I had with him, your name would come up in some form or fashion. Just looking at this crowd, what does, people of all different walks, political leans, views on issues, pro-gun, not so pro-gun, but there's just, to me, this is what is remarkable about the tapestry that is Tucson. It's a fiber that comes together, fibers that come together and make a strong community. And God, the point Jim made about Emil Franzi bringing us all together, it is a gift that I will remember for a long time, and I really appreciate it. I think it is ironic, as Bruce mentioned, that the first real big monsoon storm here in town is on the day of this event. You think about the elements of a monsoon. A little hot air, good first start, a little thunder, a little lightning, and then you get the rain, which refreshes and renews the spirit. And to me, that was Emil Franzi. He is somebody that will forever impact my life. He taught me, and I think I knew this, but we were obviously from two different political spectrums on the beliefs. And the one thing, as I said in my piece, that didn't matter to him. The friendship was more important. And that, to me, was a gift I will forever remember. And I hope, as we move forward, we all will remember that. One other thing, too, and I just think about this with a smile. The people in my office who I worked loved Emil Franzi. And, he was not, he was Emil, and we all know, we all heard stories about it, but I was thinking as I sit in my back office, and the door would open, and I hear him having a running conversation all the way back to my office on any variety of different topics with the various people he met. And I just, to me, it's hard for me to believe that I won't hear that, and I'm not entirely convinced that I will never hear that again, but I will miss it. So again, thank you very much to the family. He loved you guys, and I didn't know you well, but I didn't know you well personally, but I knew you well through your dad. And Kathy, God bless you for being married to him. Thank you very much.
Kathy, God bless you.
Our next speaker needs little introduction. Franzi was one of his real supporters, and he also, as we would expect, was able to give him help in a private Franzi ran when the situation called for it. Pima County Administrator and longtime BFF, best Franzi friend, Chuck Huckleberry.
Thank you, Bruce. I went up on the 11th floor, I think in about 1985, and at that time, the 11th floor was both the location for the county manager's office and the board of supervisors. And I wasn't there very long until I heard yelling and screaming from across the hall. And it was Emil Franzi giving Chairman Sam Lena hell over something that he had done or not done. So that was my introduction to Emil, and I'd known Emil before that because I was at the transportation department and he was out in the facilities management department. He managed all the janitorial contracts, did the parking, did a whole bunch of things for the county. And I can remember when he retired from the county, and you heard a little bit about that from Beth Horizon. And the family probably remembers this, going to go out and do a car wash. And we thought, well, gee, that's kind of, that's not Franzi, but maybe he knows something we don't know. So I think he tried that for a while and quickly went back into what he did best, the political commentary, the analysis, the politics, the discussion, the debate, that basically was stimulating and got him to the point of where he was interested in many things of great diversity, as you've heard tonight. He would often call, and the receptionist or someone knew to put Franzi through. So as soon as Emil got on the phone, I'd hold it out about here, and I'd wait for 10 minutes, and then I'd say, "Yes, Emil, thank you." And he did that with a great deal of regularity, and he had a view of politics and elected officials, which he either loved you or he hated you. For the ones he loved, he called, basically leaders and lions and could get things done. To the ones that he didn't necessarily respect, he called them potted plants. I think you probably all heard that. Well, one of the things that I was rooting for Emil to become, to find out whether he's a potted plant or whether he's a lion, and that was in the town of Tortolita. And as you recall, it got, basically signed into existence by direct petition. And I was actually rooting for Emil to be the mayor of Tortolita. I thought that would be great because you got to remember, I'm kind of a long-term bureaucrat, and we go through all these very, orchestrated processes to do things that really drive normal people crazy. But what I was really interested in seeing was because, if you remember, every elected official of a community gets to be on what's called the Pima Association of Governments or the Regional Transportation Authority, and they all get a chance at being the chair of that particular august body. So I was just absolutely dreaming to see Emil be the chair of the Pima Association of Governments. And I was hugely disappointed. So I could imagine Emil having a debate within the then Mayor Tom Volge or someone else about the finer points of political rhetoric. One of the calls that I got, in the county, we didn't have red light cameras, we had speed cameras. And Supervisor Carroll knows well about the speed cameras. I think one of them may have actually found you one time. But Emil was, the typical rant, the libertarian in him was basically saying this is governmental intrusion and how can you do that? And I had another 10-minute rant from Emil, and he says, you just ought to get rid of those. And I said, okay, Emil, you're right. And that was that. And what Emil didn't know is I had all the studies and all the analysis that already been done that says they weren't effective and we're going to get rid of them. So I gave Emil full credit of basically convincing me that we needed to get rid of the speed cameras. So he did that well. I think the other thing you got to remember is that obviously he was a gun advocate for all sorts of gun activities, including the shooting sports. And if you recall, we had in the bond issue of 1997 and 2004, basically shooting facilities that had to be approved by the voters. And I was the one who had to insert that into the bond package, kind of in between what the bond committee was talking about, and I actually got it stuck in the middle of 20 or 30 projects and nobody saw it, so it got through, and every once in a while they said, well, why did you do that? And I said, it's very simple. I didn't want to get yelled at by Emil. He basically caused a lot of things to change, and his methods were pretty direct, and you got the message pretty easily. One of his last advocacies, I think, was one of his most passionate, and that was animal care. Thanks to Emil and all the hard work of a lot of people, that particular measure passed 60 to 40. That's pretty phenomenal in a very diverse community when we think about how we wanted to treat our animals. And Emil was basically one of the very earliest champions of animal care and doing things differently in animal care that we're doing now. And he also always talked about his mutts. He talked about a lot of things, and which was the latest mutt from the animal care facility that he was taking care of. And when you would talk to him, and I would often talk to him, he would talk to me about his family, talk about what his daughters were doing and how they were successful and the things, and then he'd talk about his dogs. And it was like they were part of the family. And so I think we can all thank Emil for having a huge victory in that animal care facility, which is going to be open in December. Yeah. While he may have espoused Republican concepts in the area of conservation, and you'll probably hear this from someone else, he was what you might call a Teddy Roosevelt Republican. He basically was an early advocate of a conservation plan, and basically was one unwavering kind of support when other folks in the real estate industry were basically arguing with Pima County about what we were doing, taking all this property off the tax roll. And he went on his own and proved that the basic, what we call rent-a-cow ranching, was doing absolutely nothing to the tax rolls, but basically destroying the environment. And so he was an early advocate for conservation, and I think many of our successes was because, as they say, he had our back in many of the arguments that we had over time. Early Rosemont opponent, and did a lot of things that were kind of unconventional from a Republican perspective. But he did what he thought was right, and that's what's most important. We're going to miss him. He loved his family. He loved his daughters, granddaughter, and you can be proud of him. Thank you. Thank you.
Is Nickel here? Probably, okay. Where is he? All right, he's here. Good. Most of us know how fond Franzi was of the late great investigative reporter Crystal Barris. Franzi had a hand in the celebration of life when he passed away way too young. There were many terrific reporters at the Tucson Weekly, especially when they were advertising gentlemen's clubs and escort services. One of the weekly cub reporters who has grown up and stands shoulder to shoulder with the others who came before him is Jim Ninsel. Franzi respected his work even when they disagreed on the topic. Franzi's admiration for him is well earned. Jim?
we've moved on from the gentlemen's clubs to the weed ads. So if you're a dispenser, you know where to find your coupons. I did get the full Franzi any number of occasions. It was always a delight. Easier on the telephone than in person. Less damp. I had actually heard about Emil Franzi long before I met him, because I would read City Magazine and I'd see this byline, Emil Franzi, and I was like, wow, what a byline. And he'd always be off looking for the best chicken fried steak in all of Arizona, which was southern Arizona. So I was always intrigued by it, and then I'd hear about him. I started working at the Weekly.
Keith would love it. Okay.
I followed a little bit of his management of Beth's dad, George Borazon's run for the mayor of Tucson in 1991. After that, Beth handed out T-shirts with bullet holes in them that said, "I survived Franzi." For all the campaign workers. Spectacular moment. A few years later, I actually met him because he showed up at the Tucson Weekly when we brought in a new editor, Dan Huff, and Huff brought in Franzi, and it changed the atmosphere of that paper in ways I can't even tell you. The thing about him is he had so much passion for whatever he was doing. He would just unload, and you didn't want to be too close when he unloaded in certain circumstances. I remember him, there was some dispute up in Marana about some referendum petitions getting tossed out on a technicality or something. I heard him on the phone with the clerk of the town of Marana, and she got the full Franzi, let's just put it that way. It was brutal. He concluded the conversation with, "It's called heat, man!" So it was great. I learned so much from him. I still have things that go in my mind every day somewhere. The fix is in. Fuck them if they can't take a joke. One time I was at a party, Tucson Weekly get-together, and I noticed he wasn't drinking. And I said, "Hey, well, why don't you have a beer?" And he's like, "The good Lord only gives you so many beers, and I used up a lot of mine at a young age." So it didn't make much sense to me then. It makes a lot more sense to me now. I'm gonna miss him so much. I just can't even imagine this place without his memory and his commentary and his contributions. I don't know where he is now. He's not a rest in peace kind of guy, as far as I can tell. He's probably, I suspect, raising hell somewhere. So, we'll miss you, Emil.
Hang on. I've gotten worse than Franzi. No, we're good. We're good. I'm going to read something. She was supposed to be here, so Christine, that she didn't show up. Christine started as a caller to the radio show. I can't tell you how many times Franzi screamed at her and hung up on her. She became one of us deplorables. And for those of you on the left side of the ledger, you got rid of Christine Bowserman here in Arizona. But she's in Washington, D.C., believe it or not, as the Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Environmental Protection Agency. As Ray Carroll would say, revenge sometimes is best served cold. Our bonding moment was a conversation about Democrats in town we respected, those with brains. We were in it for the war, but both loved the fight and a good opponent, and we realized our list of idiots and smart people was pretty close. We believed in shaking the hand of the winner, so I became Babe, a student and friend of one of the smartest men ever. Emil had a teaching style where just when he got better with each lesson. I remember once after calling into a show, he made me so mad, and when I called him after the show, he picks up the phone and yells with great Emil joy, "That was great radio." That moment when you realize that he knows how to make you feel better, and he cares enough. So thanks for the lessons. Thanks for helping me get where I am today, because you did. Thanks for answering all those questions and all the life lessons and deep insights into political life, Tucson and idiots. Thanks for all the ideas and for believing in me and supporting me. Thanks for taking the time and caring enough to go out on a limb to get me into the lion's den by convincing them I was a worthy opponent. Pretty nice thing from the lady we call a crazy lady a few times.
That's funny.
It is my pleasure to welcome to the microphone somebody very few might ever imagine respected and admired one another. Fitz. Both Emil Franzi and David Fitzsimmons have a knack of creating a major public response when something gets their goat, like a shitstorm. While sometimes they approached politics from a different point of view, they respected one another's patriotism. Special thanks to David for joining us here this evening. Dave?
He's the one that writes all the
Thanks,
cartoons.
Bruce.
Okay.
And thanks, Emil. It's worth it just to have Bruce to my left. I rendered 2 cartoon images of my good friend. Let me pause right there to say, I am so damn surprised to see so many people here because I thought I was Emil's only lunch buddy. But apparently, he had more friends than just me. And our friendship was based on one ethos. And it was this. And Mr. Nitzel mentioned it earlier. Fuck them if they can't take a joke. And that is because at heart, Emil had enormous faith in our democratic republic. It was unshakable. When Emil and I would get together, we would argue and we would bitch and we would kvetch and we would draw blood and we would part as friends because we loved politics more than we could ever possibly hate each other. And in fact, I gotta tell you, I got to enjoy my own Emil Franzi memorial service in my home maybe about 2 weeks ago when the movie channel aired The Big Country. You know that movie? It had Emil throughout the whole movie. It had Charlton Heston, it had Colts, it had Remingtons, it had Gregory Peck, it had dames, it had a big sky, and it had that beautiful musical score. Everything about that movie, to me, captured my good friend Emil. So my first drawing is of Happy Emil. You see that? That's Happy Emil. Why is he happy? Because he's pissed somebody off. That's why he's happy. And the second one, I'll give this to you, my dear. It's hard to see up there, but this is the look you'd see when Emil thought you had no idea what you're talking about when it came to politics, westerns, or opera. And I would call that Emil's Walter Matthau face. You know that? One more. I want to quote myself, something I wrote about him. I love sparring and laughing with Emil, the libertarian opera aficionado, flaming Saguaro hugger, and one-time semi-automatic weapons editor for the Tucson Weekly. I'm sure he's up there, down there, who knows where, editorializing, pissing off archangels, and trying to get the clouds paved appropriately. If you want to talk to Emil for an hour, ask him one of these 5 questions. Number 1, what's your favorite opera? Number 2, so what do you think of Chicago politics? Number 3, do you think Patton would have made a great opera? Number 4, Clint Eastwood versus Charlton Heston. Remington's at 200 yards. Who wins? And number 5, Emil, how much do you love your family? Oh, what I had to listen to. Endless. And what a delight. What a delight. To me, he was far more than an Etruscan who loved the movie Zulu. I'll tell you what, years ago, Emil and I volunteered to become dueling pundits on K-Gun, doing counterpoint commentary, sort of like the SNL Jane You Ignorant Slut fun stuff. And we'd arrive at the studio early and we'd laugh and we'd gossip and we'd tell stories about everybody else. And then the floor director, okay, get in your seats. And when the light went on, oh man, we'd tear each other to shreds like bobcats tangling over a lame pack rat. And then afterwards, we'd laugh at the direct hits we played on each other. Oh, that was good. Oh, that was a really good singer. Oh, that was terrific. Oh my God, that was really good. And we'd always part as good friends. We loved doing the K-Gun shtick. We loved it so much. Emil, I am so sorry I got us fired. But Emil, you had this great laugh. Didn't Emil have this great, wicked, kind of chuckle laugh? I just loved getting that chuckle out of Emil. So I thought at this one moment, well, he was kind of prissy, right? There was a weatherman named Jim Lemon. He was getting on the set. They wanted us, Riff Raff, off the set. So I thought I'd make my friend Emil laugh. I thought the rest of the studio would have a good sense of humor when I dropped my pants and mooned Jim Lemon with my hairy ass. Emil thought it was funny. He thought it was hilarious. And even years later, even at our lunch we had a couple of months ago when I knew I was saying goodbye to my good friend, he brought it up. And he said, that was worth the chuckle, little buddy. Fuck them if they can't take a joke. In parting, I want to quote one of his heroes, General George S. Patton. Patton said, "It is foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived." Emil, to you, buddy.
Thank you, David. Not many of you may know Ed Wilkinson, but Ed Wilkinson was definitely a Franzi follower on the radio show, on Second Amendment issues, on politics, but he became one of his closest friends in the last couple of years of Emil's life, assisting in so many things, really becoming almost a family member. Ed, please come forward and say a few words.
So I first met Emil through our love of guns with the NRA. We served on the Friends of the NRA here in Tucson, raising money to try and protect all the freedoms that we have out there. And we loved doing this. He would come in, we would have conferences in my boardroom, and we would figure out all the ways to get more guns out on the streets and get more people trained and have a great time. And one year we had this crazy lady that came down from the NRA. She's what they call the field director or field supervisor, something like that. Her job was to go out and assist people in doing what we already knew how to do. He was so pissed at her. She was one of those potted plants, but the problem was she could cause us trouble. And so she came down with this thing. She said, "You guys are giving away too many guns. You gave away too many guns last year. You're only supposed to give away 1 out of every 10 items should be a gun." And Emil said, "So what are you going to do about that?" I said, "We're going to raise it to 5 out of 10. He said, "I'm in." And so we went from there and had a great time. It was common that he would call up, he'd go, "Wilkinson, Franzi, let's talk about this." And he would just go on and on and on. And that was my first introduction to Emil. Great time. The next thing was his love for radio. I remember going in there to the station, I would sneak in, and he had nothing but the utmost respect for people like Tom Dennehy and people like Harry Alexander. He would point through the glass and say, "There's the best board operator in the world." And he would say, "Harry, find this music." Next thing you know, it would appear. And it would be great. He would sit there with Dennehy, and they would be ready to get in this heated argument. Franzi would say, "Watch this." and then fireworks would explode, and they would yell and scream. Then Harry would cut and go to the music, and they'd laugh and pat each other on the back. and it would be all good. Then one day, Rosemont Mine came into the picture, and he called me up. He said, "Wilkinson, Franzi, Rosemont's a scam. Figure it out and call me back." Boom, and he hangs up. I go, "What the hell?" And I called him back. "Emil, what do you want me to find?" He goes, "Find the dirt. It's out there." And so there I go digging for the dirt, and I found some things out. I called him back. I said, "Emil, here's what I found." He goes, "I knew it. Those fuckers. It's all a scam." And one of the other great loves of hate was Allie Miller.
I hate Allie Miller.
One of the things that he would say, "I hate Allie Miller." In fact, I knew for sure that his last dying words were, "Fuck you, Allie Miller." I wasn't there, so that's my version of what happened. So I had a phone call. It was Emil saying, I said, "Emil, how you doing?" He goes, "I'm not too well. I'm in the hospital." I said, "All right, where are you at?" I went down there. They admitted him to Oro Valley. He hated Oro Valley Hospital. He hated Oro Valley Hospital as much as he loved Northwest Medical Center. And I go in, and this is day one. I show up. The doctor comes in. He's the hospitalist, you know, the guy that gets paid to go home and sleep at night and not get calls. And he came in, and the first thing he did was he started talking about hospice. Well, Emil did not like that at all. He said, "Hospice? Fuck you. You're fired. Get out." Because Emil knew he was not dying yet. In fact, Emil was one of the people that I truly can say he lived until he died. And that is so important.
Absolutely.
So there we are in the hospital. We got him transferred from Oro Valley to Northwest. He was happy. He was excited. They started feeding him food through a sack in his arm. He didn't like that. And a couple of days before he passed, I looked at him, and he looked like hell. I said, "Emil, you need a shave." He said, "Oh, God, I would love that." I said, "All right, I'll set it up." So the next day I came back. I brought my whole kit. We told the nurse, "He's busy for an hour. Stay out." We shut the door, locked it, had guards out there. I was going to get Mark Napier out there to guard it, but he ran off. So I spent an entire hour giving him a shave. Hot towels, hot lather, did it again, got him all cleaned up. He was so grateful because he didn't want to look bad. Even in his worst moment, even in his final moments, he had respect for himself. And that was beautiful. I remember the last time I saw him, it was late at night. Bruce was there. We're walking out, getting ready to leave. I go over and said, kissed him on the forehead, said, "I love you, Emil." He said, "I love you too." And that was the last time I saw him, but that's one of the most memorable times. To be able to say to a dear friend, "I love you," and have him know that it comes from the bottom of your heart. And when he responds, have you know it comes from the bottom of his. Thank you.
I was there. Everything he said is true. The second Republican Emil Franzi ever gave a shit about is former Pima County D4 Supervisor Ray Carroll. If Franzi ever did have a son, it might have been Ray Carroll.
It should have been Ray Carroll.
They fought many political campaigns together as well as bond issues. Ray had no greater friend and defender than Franzi. It might not surprise you that sometimes the father gave some serious lectures to his son. Franzi greatly admired Ray's position on conservation and animal care. They remained close even after Ray left office. Ray?
Thank you all for being here. I know it's a little bit of heaven right here outside. We're going to be walking into some great creosote smell. It's such like heaven that I was figuring what Ninsel said, and I was Fitzsimmons, where is Franzi right now? And I can tell you where he is. It's Voices of the Heavens. If I could have a phone prop, I'd try to call, but we can't call. We can't call, but we'll all see Franzi, and we'll hear the Voices of the Heavens program someday. And on it, if I was his cub reporter, which I sometimes served as around town and other places when I'd be with my son Shane, who's here today, we'd be out at the gun range, places my wife and I'd be on a Saturday, and he'd need a filler for his program. He'd call me, and I'd pull away and get a phone call into Franzi's program and tell him where we were. It might be at a convention for the Republican Party, or it might be some type of other gun show at the fairgrounds with my son, as I said. I would tell him how strong his family is here tonight and how much they're enjoying this program just as much as any of us are. Participating in it, each and every person, it's a tough act to follow. I've enjoyed
It was the kitten
so
photo.
much being one more time with my pal, Franzi. I want to say, Emil, Franzi, I wrote this stuff because I wanted to make sure it was the best eulogy I ever had a chance to give, because he was like a father to me, of course. Emil Franzi, the man, the story, and the legacy goes like this. Emil was not a mythic, invincible critter. He was just a man. He was given an allotted time like any other man. Emil had a great will to live, and that's why in 2013, the moment of disaster, when the news really was given to him that his number was up, here's what he did. He fought like hell. And he gave a powerful imitation of mortality, and he gave us a few more years of Franzi. He knew what really mattered. Number one was his family. Number two was this Sonoran desert and the people and the critters and the sky above it. He loved this land. Emil knew the present tense of the verb to be. It was a life-affirming verb, and he wanted to hang in there and be with that verb. In any tense, that verb was welcome in Emil's diverse and complicated world. Speak it and you'll agree. You'll hear Emil, and you'll seem to be present with his spirit when you say, I am, thou art, she is, he is, we are, you are, and they are. Emil was not a mythic character. To me, he was a real-life action figure, and although I knew only the recent 25 years or the last third of his life, he was justly compared to and was friends of many other adventurers and writers of his time, of this region, this state, and this country. He knew who he was, and he was well aware that there's nothing we can all own but our own death, and he was going to fight like hell and show us how to do it. He fought his death battle like a 12-rounder. He knew it was uphill. My affection for those who kept him alive, not only in the hospital, he did not like the word hospice, and he would not go there as mentioned. He, at the hospital with him, he did not like that goddamn picture of fucking Ringo and Wyatt. Pull those down too, because they've been propped up there along the wall for about 3 days by then. He did not want to have any more of those cowboys staring at him. It was tough to be with Emil in the last days. My affection, like I said, and my profound gratitude is for his family and those that kept him alive and the people that stayed with him till the end. Emil lost the war with cancer, and as all wars go, he won some great battles. And I'm going to tell you about the last big battle. It was the Pima Animal Care Center. And as I said, if I was calling Emil's radio show to be a cub reporter, I'd tell him that, Emil, your family is here, your friends are here, even some of your frenemies are here, and some of your opponents were here. But in the end, this one was Emil's rock-solid campaign. The Pima Animal Care Center had Dan Ekstrom and I as chairing on some fundraising, Nancy Young-Wright, many other people Chuck had recruited, Rich Moret on the advertising buys, David Steele. It was deep with great talent, and it was one item. It was overdue. And remember, the Animal Care Center was built 50 years ago, so you put that in dog years, it's 350 years it's been sitting on Silverbill. And he knew it was time for a change, and so did all the rest. The The last time we had lunch, Dan Ekstrom and I and Danny was at Jackie Egan's funeral, another lovely part of our lives in the past. And Beth Borzon and Emil and I all went to lunch at a pub close by and just enjoyed the heck out of that. And the legacy that I want to say about that is Emil was a fabulous attendee of funerals, even recently when he was just, really unable, really on his own, and shouldn't have been. He'd attend, and because he knew the respect that was given, and he deserves this, and he would really appreciate all of you being here so strongly. It's kind of like a press conference, a gun show, and a family reunion all in one. But his legacy is, I might say again, the last part of my piece on the Pima Animal Care Center, he loved that battle. The aforementioned leader of the opposition, he loved to get a photo of her wearing a pig snout on a street corner, which was, he had to post that everywhere. And but it was a hell of a battle, and he won it. And he was a Texan spender when it came to animals. And when it came to the environment, he was true blue. And those things that we all fell for in all the campaigns, I'm so honored that my family was involved with Emil as closely as I was so many times. And I'd like to say his legacy and the gifts that we're trying to raise in Emil's memory are those to the Empire Ranch Foundation and to Pima Animal Care Center. Karen Hollish, who was part of that big campaign back there in 2014, Prop 415, Nancy will speak about that campaign a little bit, knows how important the effort that Emil gave for the next 50 years is going to be. We need to subsidize the program. We need to make sure it's working. My wife and I are chairing the outreach and the fundraising committee for a future campaign to do just that. But we want you to know that those two legacy builders for Emil's memory are out there and able for you to participate. If you'd like to look them up, Empire Ranch Foundation and Pima Animal Care Center Foundation, we'd be grateful as friends, family, and loved ones of Emil. We love all of you for being here. God bless. Thank you.
And apropos, we're getting toward the end of the evening where you can actually drink and have some good times. Just a little more about the Pima Animal Care Facility, and Nancy, if you can come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Bruce, and thanks everyone. It's an honor to be invited to talk just a little bit about Emil's soft side for animals. And I want to just take a minute and just say to the family my condolences, first of all, and to talk about, has anybody else noticed what a beautiful family that Emil helped create with his wife? These are beautiful. And the pictures of Emil as a little kid, I mean, I'm just sitting there loving these tributes, but truly he did have very many dimensions to him. And before I get into the talk about the Animal Care Center, I had actually heard lots of things about Emil before I ever met him. I had moved up to the northwest side when Oro Valley only had 3,000 people. So it was the eye of the hurricane. And I've been reading him, I think he was a columnist for the Star at that point. He started writing about things like the cost to the taxpayers of unmitigated, unbridled growth. He started writing about things like impact fees. He started writing about things like rent-a-cow. And then I got involved in a couple of land use battles, referendum drives. Anybody remember Desert Springs, Sabino Springs? He was there. He was there at those things, advising his good friend Wanda Shuddick. And I'm pretty sure he helped Wanda crash the Crosstown Freeway. And someday I'm going to have to write about that Crosstown Freeway crash, because every time I meet someone from Phoenix, they say, "What the hell is the matter with you people down there? You're such hicks. You don't have all these freeways we have." But if we'd had them, we'd have a whole lot different town than we have now. So lots of thanks to Emil. The other thing that I remember about him, and then I'll get into Prop 415, was he was around when we got together to reform the Amphi School Board. Some of us against our will, but we did. And we won. And Emil used to think that was so funny. He just thought it was hilarious. He said, is it the Bobbsey twins or is it the Girl Scout troop who won? Because it was Aspen and Loretta and a bunch of us who got together and just went out and did good old-fashioned grassroots stuff. And Emil just thought it was hilarious, and he laughed about that all the time. But back to that campaign of 2014, it was a bond issue for $22 million, which was a pretty big bite, you know, at that time, and people were having trouble understanding. And so Emil got on board, thank God, and got the message home right on down, and he created I thought, the best mailer of all. I wish I could have found it to bring it. Had a little kitten and a little puppy, and it just said, for pennies a day, you can save their lives. And Emil had the ability to be kind of like Don Draper on Mad Men. He could just do Madison Avenue copywriting and take all these ideas that, you know, lawyers had talked about, and they were boring and they were thick to read through, and he would just distill it down, and he'd get it. It's like taking a dart and hitting the bullseye.
We did have the horses in the
and
burrow.
he did that. He did that, and we fought all summer long.
They
very
arrived in
hard
the
battle,
back
and I
of a
was in New
pickup
Mexico
truck.
on a little trip when I heard about the
We've had
people on the
animals.
corners waving signs in pig suits. And I called him right away. I mean, who else do you call when you're really upset about something on a campaign that you're working on with Emil? And I said, oh my God, what are we going to do? I can't get back fast enough. And he started laughing. And I said, please help me understand why this is funny. They could do us real damage. And he said, Nancy, if I didn't have those pig people on the corner, I'd have to invent them to get all of the rest of the people who aren't working hard up off their butts to work hard and get out there and write a check. So he said, I'm delighted the pig people are out on the corners. I hope they get out every day. So someone's already talked, I think it was both Chuck and Ray, about the 60-40 win. And that night at the shanty, there were people from all kinds of political persuasions or no political persuasion whatsoever. I think David was amazed at how many volunteers there were. They didn't really have a field campaign for volunteers because they didn't think they'd have any. And they put out more Prop 415 signs, I think, in that they'd had on any campaign, because everybody wanted to help. And at the center of it all, there was Emil. It was such a pleasure to work with him. The last time I talked with Emil, it was mid-March, and it was after a meeting out in Marana where they had billed it as a study session and correctly agendized it that they might take action about breaking away from the county for their animal care services. And it was all very abrupt, and it might work out okay, who knows. But Emil and I were worried, and we weren't worried about anything else except the welfare of the animals. And we were talking about different things we might be able to do or not do to help, and running through a whole litany of things that everybody from Tortolita here, this is like Old Home Week, knows very well. And I promised him I'd get back to him if I learned of anything concrete or solid we could do about it to help. And the last thing he said was, call me back if we find anything. He said, you know I'm in, I'm all in, and I want to help. So that's what I remember the most. He was all in. In fact, he had a dog, thinking about it, that was bitten by a rattlesnake and harmed pretty badly. And I thought he was going to end that story by saying something like, that damn rattlesnake, you know, it cost me a lot of money. But instead he said, you know, that was my fault. I should have gone out and checked the yard first. And he said, the rattlesnake was just trying to earn a living. So he had a really broad view on stuff that surprised you. But anyway, from the Girl Scout troop, and all the animals and all the people in the future, all the animals in the future, I just have to thank Emil for that last super hard battle, and to the family, my condolences.
Thank you, Nancy. In full disclosure, our next speaker, Rich Moret, is my brother-in-law. I've known him since the summer of 1964, but even if I wasn't related, I would still greatly admire his work as a political operative and a copywriter. He and Franzi did some of the most impactful and successful TV, radio, and outdoor campaigns together over the past couple of decades. He and longtime Franzi collaborator and radio producer Harry Alexander have put together something very special from Franzi I think you might enjoy.
Hope this stuff works, Brett.
There's Pumo. Yeah, all the dogs.
Is it audio?
Yes, thanks, Ray. Thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Harry. When Bruce asked me to speak tonight, I was, I guess I'd have to say, at a loss for words, scared shitless, because I knew all these people were going to be saying wonderful things, and all I could do is ask Bruce to be batting cleanup here, because I did have an idea, and I called Harry, and Harry loved the idea. Later I told Bruce, Bruce loved the idea, and it seemed only fitting that we do this, so bear with me.
I have the honor to produce Emil Franzi's 2 radio programs at KVLI Radio, Inside Track and Voices of the West for almost 5 years. This wasn't my first rodeo in producing talk shows. I've hosted them and produced them at various radio stations across the U.S. and the world. But I learned very quickly to be ready for anything and everything when producing Inside Track. Franzi and his guests could be unpredictable, to say the least. Inside Track was a 3-hour program. The first hour was set for open phones where Franzi and callers would set the agenda. Second hour was generally relegated to local and state issues. The third hour was reserved for national and international guests. The Voices of the West radio program highlighted the Old West and everything that went with it. Franzi was a student of history, and I must say I learned quite a bit of history producing that program, thanks to Emil. Well, let's begin by highlighting the Inside Track guests over the period, the local and the national guests.
Are these the same politicians who are really pushing gun control? So what it looks like, gun control good, bomb control bad.
That's a call away. Wow. Can you imagine that you have that mentality with respect to gun control, and you have entirely a different perspective when it comes to not just bomb control, but bomb control?
Our front-running Democrat called the Republicans terrorists and said we were going to put people in boxcars this week.
Bernie Sanders said that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot who was number one. Number one on the Orange Panther. That looks like prison detail.
You know me well enough. Who would I vote for if this person were running? Elizabeth Warren. If I could get Elizabeth Warren to run, or...
I would vote for the son of Sam against any of your candidates.
That was the editor of the Tucson Sentinel.
As an independent investigative reporter, discovered what she herself says are crimes that happen in her office. Should I get a thank you for, oh my God, these terrible, terrible things were going on in my office that I reported to the FBI. She said she reported to TPD and there are investigations ongoing. Who is sending out fundraising letters because of this investigation, saying that, she's being attacked, this proponent of transparency. We're still waiting for those public records.
Dylan, we got a little bit going.
Still waiting.
Part 37. Emily Miller Cycle.
We're provided with a set of emails that date back several years, right to the beginning of her term, really. And all along, she has been instructing her staff to use their private emails to do public business. And use encrypted drives to be able to make it so that people can't see what they're doing, so they need to be more secretive.
From the governors of America, Larry Pratt.
Anybody that wants to talk about guns and the importance of the Second Amendment, which at the end of the day is so politically incorrect, because our forefathers said we have guns so that we can keep you from becoming a tyrant. That's what the Second Amendment's all about. The fact that I can come on your show and say that is kind of encouraging.
Former Ambassador Francis Rooney, Ambassador to the Vatican in the Bush administration. Gary, go ahead.
If they cannot bring the Christian refugees into the refugee camp where there are Muslims because they might be murdered, then why would you introduce these Muslims into one of the greatest Christian societies of Germany? That's a real good question. And I think when Mr. Trump overspoke a little bit, the concept that he was trying to express, I think the guy's striking a resonant chord.
Christopher Harris, the Executive Director of Unhyphenated America. How do we end this culture?
Regardless of where you come from, your ethnicity or whatever like that, you can be an American. I try to live black community. I don't like the term African American. The term African American is a new thing. Jesse Jackson promoted it in 1988. Jesse Jackson was the one who promoted it. Is another reason to not use it.
We are especially honored today to have the great Michael Barone.
They're having an election in Brazil. 104 million people voted. They vote on touchscreen. The results are available nationally in 5 hours. In our wonderful technologically advanced state of California, they have to take 5 weeks to count the vote. There's something wrong there. We've been leapfrogged by Brazil.
1st Battalion of Native Cavalry in the far west, 1863 to 1866. Did they ever really have an engagement with the Apache?
The term I use in the book is a pursuit gun. There's two mentions of them actually having fights where people are wounded or killed. The Apaches are always within sight. That's the interesting part. And it's very clear that they're taunting the soldiers.
On local media, Franzi didn't have much nice to say, especially when the Arizona Daily Star is concerned. Now, before you hear this, remember that Franzi was the recipient of numerous Arizona Press Club awards for his writing and knows about which he speaks. But, here's part of the problem. Irresponsible journalism. Does anybody remember that once upon a time when you wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper, you not only had to sign your real name, you gave your address. Your home address. Ooh. Really you. Now, what we have is a newspaper that would if they ran the letter and it was BS, would put a comment section, the editor would say, excuse me, the Germans did not start World War II by bombing Pearl Harbor in 1931. First of all, the newspapers wouldn't print that crap to begin with. You had to have a pretty decent letter to the editor before you get it published. Now, what have I got from the Arizona Daily Star? I've got a whole thank you column every Christmas. Here's all the people who sent us a letter. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Pathetic slop they have promoted. They don't correct any of it. They don't correct any factual errors. They aid in the disinformation business. They're no better off than a propaganda agent for Pravda. They just throw that crap out there because it fills space, because the corporation knows words we don't have to pay for are best. The criticism didn't stop there. On one show, he got down and dirty on the U.S. Congress. Here's my point with Congress. It's not there to take care of the people who are in it. It is not there to have the internal rules and how we treat each other and how we do this part and the procedure for that part. If you had a boo-boo wow, no. It's there as one of the three branches of government. Its first job is keeping the other two from having too much power. The Congress of the United States has totally vacated its power to appropriate. One of the most fun times on the program was when Franzi would take callers to task, like this one. All right, I got that. What I couldn't understand is what the hell you were doing talking about Huckleberry.
Gets on his show, he gets airtime and talks about the schools. Well, we got one there in schools.
James, with all deference, you're a tad incoherent on this one, and I'm out of time, and we don't have time to straighten it out. Call back next week. This caller wished she had maybe dialed a different telephone number. Here's Julie. You're up, Julie.
Yes, Mr. Franzi, I just have to tell you that you are so full of it. You attend the Board of Supervisors meeting at Dillon, and he was the first time he ever showed up. What is it about you in the corruption of King County that you're going to cream Allie Miller?
Hey, Julie, can you stop right there and point to the exact, because you used the word corruption. Would you please give me your first example of it and who you're hanging it on?
Of the corruption?
Yeah.
Allie works very
No, I don't want to hear about Allie. I want you to tell me what's corrupt. You used the word. You chose to. Back it up.
Ouch. Where's all the money gone all these years that were for the roads? Where did it disappear to? Why was the bond recent that...
You're asking questions. You are not stating facts.
Okay.
Tell me what's corrupt.
Okay. The roads are horrible in King County.
That means people stole the money, right? Somebody stole that money?
Yeah.
They did. Who stole it?
Well, hey, you used bad words there, Franzi.
No, I used a bad word because your allegation can be converted to saying, when you say there's corruption and the money missing, why, you're talking theft, you're talking crime. Give me a name and give me a specific.
Appropriated, jerk. The roads is appropriated too.
To what?
What's the money?
Really? What?
14 million
Thank you, Harry, for putting that together. Harry and I and Bruce thought it would be appropriate to give Franzi the last word. A couple of years ago, I was visiting Bruce at his second home in Coronado and discovered there is a bar there, Irish pub called McPee's, where all the Navy SEALs hang out. And so I asked, well, what are those guys drinking? And they're drinking an Irish whiskey called Tullamore Dew. So I came back here and met Franzi at Highfalutin, his favorite bar, North and West Side. I said, oh, the SEALs are drinking Tullamore Dew, that'll be good enough for us. And from that time on, that's what Emil was drinking. That is what we have right here, right? So,
Amen.
You all are going to be getting some of this, right, Bruce?
Bring it.
Okay, well, you're going to be getting some, but I am going to drink a toast right now to my buddy, to Franzi. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And the bar will be open, continue to be open when we're done here. Everybody, I hope you have some of that nice Irish whiskey. Franzi always accused his son-in-law Daryl and I of not being real men because we don't drink brown whiskey. I'll be drinking it tonight. I may pay for it tomorrow. Daryl, I hope you'll have some with me. It'll be fun. And we've talked a lot about Franzi, and the reason this went on as long as it did was because there was no one way to describe this guy. He really was a Renaissance man. That terminology is used way too often, and it's not true. When Emil passed, his voice was stilled, but the lion of a heart is what we all will remember him for. In addition to doing some pretty incredible things in his career, he raised a wonderful family. And I want a couple of them to have some words here today. And we'll start with Monica. And I'm going to let you guys kind of run this.
Let's start with Carol. No.
Carol? Somebody's got to get up.
There we go.
All right, Dimitri.
Many of you might not know me. I met Emil. He was actually my foster father. Growing up, I recall his presence as a friend of the family. The loud, rolling belly laughter, a voice I could close my eyes and find in a crowd. The slight spitting when he got excited and smoked that large cigar that he loved so much. My teenage years offered great challenge to me, and at the age of 14, Emil and Kathy were kind enough to take me in as their foster child. I was welcomed into this loving home with two of their daughters, Monica, Rebecca, and another foster daughter named Colleen. Upon moving in, I felt right at home. I experienced a wonderful family with love, laughter, and a sense of being. Belonging was bestowed upon me. I quickly became an apprentice to Emil in the kitchen, and we typically prepared dinner together while enjoying playful banter. For the first time since I was 3 years old, I had a father, and I loved that feeling. Emil and Kathy believed in me when I really didn't have the belief in myself, and that has made all the difference in the world in my life. As I began dating, I never felt more protected. Emil could be an intimidating man, and he turned this skill to my dates as they came to the house, from a bit of grilling to showing them his gun collection, and telling my dates what time to have me home. Not one of them brought me home a minute late. In my 20s, I moved from the area, yet whenever I returned, I was always received with the greatest of warmth. Recalling an evening we sat on the patio, Emil cooked a wonderful steak dinner, and we shared ideas on life, while laughing and sharing memories of my time with Emil and Kathy. I met my late husband at the age of 29 and asked Emil if he could walk me down the aisle. I was elated when he said he could. Emil had always been there for me, treated me wonderfully, and never gave up on my life. He looked so handsome in a tuxedo. and I recall being less afraid to walk down the aisle, knowing his strength would settle my spirit. Looking back at my wedding photos, the proud look as he walked me down the aisle, the beaming of his smile as we took each other in the father-daughter dance warmed my heart. Life took me away from Tucson for some time. About a month ago, I received a call from his daughter, Monica, and once I heard he was in the hospital, I knew I had to come. As I drove to Arizona, I tried to prepare myself for how he might be upon my arrival. His feisty spirit was very much alive, yet his body was definitely beginning to reflect the cancer. I lost my husband to cancer in 2008 and was heartbroken at the thought of this dreadful disease taking another man who meant the world to me. One night he was sure his pain medication was supposed to be at 11 o'clock, yet actually it wasn't due for another hour. Watching someone you love in pain is one of the most difficult experiences you can imagine. I held his hand, I rubbed his chest, and to calm him. I encouraged him to sleep. I said, I've got the watch, and I will ring in an hour for your meds. He went to sleep. Another night he was restless. We talked for many hours about life, love, experiences, and whatever else came up. When I asked if he wanted me to stay until he fell asleep, he said, if you want to. I stayed. The cancer treatment was beginning to take its toll. I recall sitting with him the day before he passed, and as I was getting ready to leave, he looked me in the eye and said, I always knew you were beautiful, yet I never knew how beautiful. His words will stay in my heart forever, as will my memories with him. He restored my faith in fatherhood, and I shall always remember the love, faith, hope he always instilled in me. I am proud to call him my father, and I wish to thank the family for always making me feel at home.
Now they're all crying, you're gonna have to wait.
Monica?
The grandchild.
Sure, many of you know me as the grandchild, so. You guys talked about the Franzi, him yelling, screaming, spitting, all that. To me, that was just granddaddy. That was normal. That was growing up. Everything. I remember one time we were driving down the road, and it was a few years ago before I could drive, because as soon as I could drive, I always drove. That's very scary. But we were driving down the road, and there was a hot dog stand that used to be up on the northwest side, closer to him, and he'd always go there. And one day we drove, and there wasn't a hot dog stand, and there was a sign up that said there would no longer be able to be a hot dog stand there because of ordinances or something to do with the county. Now, Granddaddy liked his snoring hot dogs. So, immediately pulled his cell phone out, said, press this number, dial this number for me. And I handed him the phone, and for like 10 minutes, like you said, you have to hold the phone this far away. 10 minutes, he's screaming, driving, screaming, hollering, spit flying, everything, and he turns to me and just winks. And then when he hung up, he's like, hopefully I'll get my goddamn hot dog stand back. And I think my favorite story about him was from this past November. I was his chauffeur for the night, for all the election parties that he was invited to attend. So he actually was doing a round of chemo. He stopped it a day early, or took a double dose, or did something weird, so that he could have Jameson on the rocks on election night. So we get to the first party. I drove, of course, and we pull up, and he immediately goes in and says, "Give me a Jameson on the rocks, would you?" And I said, "Granddaddy, don't know how to make that exactly, so I don't want to give you too much or too little," because I was 18 at the time. So he goes over, and we're having a good time. We go to the next party, and we get to actually. It's the Democratic, like the big Democratic Party of Tucson. It was in this big hotel, and we were going to go up and visit one of, I cannot remember who, yes, Sharon Bronson, her more private party. And when we're waiting for the elevator, this man turns to me and he goes, "Can you even say the words President Trump?" Not to get too political, but I looked at him and I did vote for him because, you know, I'm my granddad's granddaughter, so I had to be blunt with him. And so this guy gets all red and he starts yelling at me. That was the last time I saw the Franzi on someone else. Then the elevator opened and he tried to get on with the same guy that he just screamed at, so I had to hold him back. Just growing up, I knew that cuss words were bad because I couldn't say them around my mom without her getting upset with me, but they were just other words. Easily exchanged, easily flowed. I remember one time when I first started saying the F word. It was a story, I don't remember it, but how proud were you when I started saying the F word, Mom? I was like 3. My granddaddy really did. He taught me a lot. How to cuss, how to eat some hot dogs, how to keep them down. Couldn't legally teach me how to drink some whiskey or scotch or whatever. He tried. Couldn't do it. So I'll try. I gotta make him proud. At least give it a good try. But definitely taught me how to stand up for myself, how to yell at people until they heard what I'm saying.
Oh, man.
That's true. Yes.
How to shoot.
And to shoot.
And how to shoot. He did teach me. For my 14th birthday, he gave me a .22 Remington rifle. Because that was on his 14th birthday. He walked down to the corner store and bought himself one. So, but yeah, back when you could. But definitely gonna miss that old guy. I'm gonna miss calling the house and hearing, "Hey, big kid, how the hell are ya?" Because that was every time. But thank you guys for showing up.
How do you follow that, right? The grandchild. I didn't really prepare anything. I just want to thank everybody. I lived in Atlanta from 95, 96 until 2011 and then moved back here. And so a lot of the stuff that you guys are sharing tonight was a part of my dad that I had no idea about because I didn't live here. So all of these stories have helped me to learn who my father was as an adult, not just my dad who at 6 in the morning on Saturday when I was out late would start vacuuming and the door or that caught me when I said I got home around 2 and so then he came in and said, "Why is the engine on the car still warm?" So my second Demetria, it was very hard to date. There was one time I dated a gentleman right out of high school and he worked for the sheriff's department and I invited him over and my mom said, "I think we need to make margaritas." My mom has never said, "Let's make margaritas." So we go in the kitchen and all of a sudden I hear my dad has all of the guns on the dining room table and says to this young man, "All right, you little fucker, tell me what you know." So that was dating with Emil as a father. And they're all now happily married. They all passed the test. But again, the outpouring of love and support over the last several weeks, month, a little bit longer has been amazing. And thank you all for helping us all to know a little bit more about who our dad was as a man versus as our dad. Thank you.
So I'm Rebecca, the baby, the doctor. One of my favorite stories about my dad is him on this radio show. I graduated medical school in 2004, okay, but I started undergrad in 1989. So on his show, he says, "I'm so glad my daughter's graduating from U of A in 2004. He says, she started back in 1989 and now she's graduating. But he doesn't include that I had 2 bachelor's degrees and I took a time off to have a child and then I went to medical school. And I was like, Dad, your listeners think I'm a loser. But in going through this losing your father, I try to talk to my friends and I realized from so many of them, they were like, yeah, I don't get it, I don't understand. You know, they weren't close to their dad, they didn't have what I had. And in hearing that, I feel I'm so lost without him and I'm so sad and I miss him, but I also realize how incredibly lucky that I was to have the man that I had. And I'm sorry to do this to you, Julia. I was telling Julia, my daughter, his granddaughter, that in this life, you are lucky if you have your person, the person you can count on for anything, the person that will be there for you no matter what. He was my person. No matter what, I could call him at 2 in the morning. I'm like, Dad, I joined ISIS. He'd be like, you fucking idiot, but I'll be there. He would be there. So I'm trying to tell Julia that how he was for me, and the next part of my statement was going to be, Julia, I want to be that person for you. And on the day that my father died, I'm telling her, Julia, I want to be that person for you. I tell her how he was for me, and she stops me and she says, Mommy, I'll be your person now. To Emil, if I had my Jameson, I would slurp it down and then.
Thank you.
Before the family came up, I had a request from a special friend of Franzi's, a guy that he did a lot of radio with over the last several years on Voices of the West. Okay, friends, say a couple words, and then we're going to close this out.
I know everybody wants to get to the bar and also to start the socializing, but I just wanted to mention something about Emil that to me was very special. A couple of years ago, I would be on the show once in a while when we would do the Western segment of Voices of the West. And at one point he asked me if I would come on and co-host with him. And that was to me a great honor because here was a man that I spent 30 years in the motion picture business as a professional stuntman. And I met a lot of people who thought they were very important. But the most important man I ever met was Emil, and he never said he was important. I want to close this out, but I know if Emil was here, there's 2 people he would want to thank. He would want to thank Harry, because he thought the world of Harry, and they worked together. It was like perfection. And one of the things, the day before he died, I talked to Emil on the phone, and his greatest concern was the show, Voices of the West, because before he got really sick, we finished the show one day, and we were walking out, and he says, that's the last show. He was finished with KVOI. He didn't want to do anything with them anymore. But he worked on it because he still had such a passion for that show that he wanted to keep it going. And the second person I want to thank is Bruce Ash, because he opened up his office. He opened up his office, and we're continuing the show as a podcast. And Emil loved Voices of the West more than he loved this political show. And that tells you something a lot about Emil. But more than anything else, thank you, Bruce.
Friends and colleagues, thank you all for coming here this evening. Thanks for sharing our friend Emil Franzi's life together. To the bar, there's lots of great food. I can't carry home all the food if you guys don't eat it. So please, and the booze, it's all there for you.